Don't need a sound check or anything? Are you guys good?
Sounds good.
We're good.
Drag that across.
That's good now.
Good morning. Welcome. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Scott McVoy with the Jeffersonville Police Department. Today's critical incident briefing is intended to provide you with information regarding a law enforcement officer-involved shooting which occurred in the West Patrol Division with the City of Jeffersonville on March 9th, 2023 at approximately 6:37 p.m. You are about to view relevant video footage and learn about police procedure and other evidence that are related to the case so that you may have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The Jeffersonville Police Department, along with our law enforcement partners, specifically in this case the Indiana State Police, produce very thorough investigations which require agencies involved to interview multiple witnesses, view and analyze numerous hours of body-worn camera footage, as well as collect forensic evidence. The Jeffersonville Police Department and the Indiana State Police are in the early stages of the investigation, in which many cases can take up to 1 year or more. I'll provide you a word of caution. The images and video that you are about to watch may be disturbing. When a law enforcement officer uses force to arrest or detain a suspect, those images can be graphic and difficult to watch. There may also be strong language by those shown in the video. Viewer discretion is advised, especially young children and those who are sensitive viewers. Questions will be taken after the presentation of the BWC footage and the pertinent facts are delivered. Please understand that many questions may not be able to be answered at this time, as this is still an open investigation with the Indiana State Police, as well as the administrative internal investigation with the Jeffersonville Police Department. Please understand this briefing is solely intended to focus on the events that occurred on March 9th, 2023. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Major Joshua Lynch. Major Lynch is the Uniform Patrol Commander for the Jeffersonville Police Department, as well as the Training Commander. Major Lynch will present the timeline and body-worn camera footage, as well as radio traffic, and narrate the course of events that occurred involving the Jeffersonville police officers on that date. Major Lynch.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. Good morning. Like the Assistant Chief said, my name is Major Joshua Lynch. I'm the Patrol Commander and the Training Commander for the Jeffersonville Police Department. I'm going to go through the incident that occurred, the body-worn camera footage, and I will be pausing that footage periodically to explain some of the actions that are taking place and the lingo that you're hearing so that you have a better understanding of what is going on. You're also going to see a timeline of events that are going to show how quickly the situation evolved. What you see now on the screen is a overview of 1501 East 8th Street, the East Lawn Arms Apartments. As you can see in the yellow square, that is the apartment complex. As you'll notice that there are several buildings and that this is a highly densely populated area. Indicated by the red square, and what you'll see in the video, is the area that the suspect was first observed with the weapon as officers were on the scene. In relation to where the suspect was observed, this star indicates where the officers and the witnesses were while the officers were obtaining information, trying to confirm exactly what was going on when they first observed the suspect, and what you'll find is here the gunfire that takes place. To give you a closer look, here's the red square again showing the parking lot that the suspect was observed, and after the suspect's first gunshot, officers took position indicated by the gold stars that show the positions of the officers in relation to where the suspect was at that time. The white arrow indicates the direction in which the suspect advanced on the officer's position, and the white star will indicate where that engagement took place. between the officers and the suspect. I'm going to introduce you to the officers that were assigned that night and responded to that call for service. Corporal Aaron Olson has been serving with the Jeffersonville Police Department since 2011. Corporal Olson is a patrol supervisor, a field training officer, a SWAT team member, and a certified instructor. Corporal Sean Diark, been serving with the Jeffersonville Police Department since 2016. He is also a patrol supervisor, field training officer, and a member of our QRT. Officer Hunter Powell, been serving with the Jeffersonville Police Department since 2018. He is a patrol officer and a canine handler. Officer Michael Mashinsky has been serving with the department since 2021. He is a patrol officer and a QRT member. And lastly, Officer Seth Christian, serving since 2021, and he is a patrol officer. These 5 officers are the officers that responded to the scene. You'll hear in the radio traffic here in a moment that they responded after being dispatched to 1501 East 8th Street. Sorry. All right, I'm going to show you a timeline of events so you can understand how quickly the situation evolved. At 6:37 p.m., the dispatcher stated that a resident at this address is on Signal 60, standing outside with a pistol in his hand, and his name is Robert. Signal 60, what you'll hear on the radio traffic, Signal 60 is a code that's used for radio traffic for narcotics. So what the officer is being told is that the caller believes that the subject is under the influence of narcotics. 3 minutes later, at 6:40 p.m., Officer Powell arrives on the scene. At 6:42 p.m., Officer Powell requests a dedicated operations channel. You'll hear in the footage, he'll say ops channel. An operations channel is a dedicated channel separate from the main dispatch channel. Officers will do this to have a separate channel where they're not competing for airtime with the entire county. Does that make sense? At 6:42 p.m., Officer Mashinsky arrives on the scene. 1 minute later, Officer Seth Christian arrives on the scene. And at that moment, dispatch advises officers that the caller believes that he is paranoid, believing that SWAT is coming for him. At 6:50 p.m., Corporal Diark arrives on the scene. And 2 minutes later, Corporal Olson arrives on the scene. In that time frame, about approximately 10 minutes, officers are communicating with the witness and trying to ascertain information about what is going on and where the subject was last seen. At 7:03 p.m., you'll see in the body cam footage that Corporal Olson advises over the radio that the male has something in his left hand, but he is unable to advise. At 7:04 p.m., Officer Mashinsky notifies radio that the subject is shooting in the air, and that is the first shot, 7:04. Also at 7:04, Officer Powell notifies dispatch that the subject is now aiming at police officers. At 7:04, the subject fires the second shot. 7:06, the subject then advances on the officer's position, relevant to the map that I showed you moments ago, raises his firearm to a shooting position, and the officers engaged him. Officer Powell announces to dispatch, shots fired, EMS code 3. And if you're not aware, code 3 is asking for an emergency response by EMS. 7:07 p.m., Officer Powell announces on the radio that a medical kit is on scene and they are rendering aid. I want to take note that 1 minute after the shooting incident occurred, that officers were on scene with a medical kit, and you'll see that in real time on body cam footage. And just 3 minutes later, EMS arrives on scene. All right, we are going to now watch the video. You'll start with the call to dispatch.
Clark County Communications Operator 902, how can I help you?
Yes, ma'am. I was wanting to know if I could be connected to a police officer.
I can't directly connect you to a police officer with the dispatch center. I can send a police officer to you.
That was what it's really important.
That would work.
Well, not for me. I don't know how about going out doing it. Where I live, there's a gentleman downstairs, and I think he's on drugs real bad, and he's standing outside of our hallway looking out the door with a pistol. And I think he's on drugs real bad because he's saying there's SWAT teams across the, I don't want nobody to get hurt.
Okay, well, I need to send somebody there so that way we can get him help. And what's the address?
Okay. It's 1501 East 8th Street, Jeffersonville, Indiana, it's apartment 7B.
Right, and you said that it's the guy, the resident, right, that lives there?
Yes, he's a resident, he lives downstairs. My husband had just left, and he said he was standing outside, looking out the hallway door, and he had a pistol in his hand. And I'm scared one of our other residents in the building is gonna come out, and he's gonna think something, and he's gonna shoot.
Right, okay. You said that he's standing outside with a pistol in his hand.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay, and
His name is Robert, if that'll help you.
what did you say about he said something about SWAT?
He said it was something about a SWAT team or something, was coming for him or something, and I think he's on something. Because
Do you think he's paranoid, thinking SWAT's gonna come for him?
That or he's on some private drugs or something, I don't know. He's not acting right. And then my husband said he had a gun just standing there, and I'm like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. And then he said somebody was upstairs making a phone call, and the person that used to live here, they don't live here any longer, they moved out.
Okay.
And,
Alright, I have to disconnect. There's an officer that's gonna call you, okay?
okay, yes, ma'am, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, so you've heard the footage, the audio, the caller who called the dispatch center, and just to summarize, the caller is stating that there's a subject with a pistol. He's standing outside the apartment, looking out the window. He said he believes that SWAT is coming for him, and that the caller believes that he is under the influence of narcotics because he's not acting right. This, I think everyone would agree, is a potentially serious situation. We're now going to hear the initial radio traffic from dispatch to the officers.
Baker Century is for suspicious person with a firearm, east on our apartments, building 7B. 132. 132. 135, 132. Color-wise, resident named Robert, on signal 60, has a firearm in his hands. You want the channel? Not right now. They're quiet, too. Can you scroll down on the map and make that go where the actual building is? No.
All right, Officer Powell is asking dispatch to put the dot on the map. And what he's referring to is the computer-aided dispatch that the officers have in their vehicle. The reason that this is important is in a situation like this, you don't want to just randomly drive into an apartment complex not knowing where the subject is. And the apartment building numbers can be confusing for this apartment complex, so he's taken measures to know exactly where he is, planning out his approach ahead of time.
Well, again, it should show the college apartment now, building 7B. Show house don't know what he's wearing, does he? 76 covered. 76 standby, 118 negative, kind of eyes on what the subject's wearing. They're wearing 18 option on each one. Take off 3, take off 3.
Again, going back, he requested an ops channel. They gave him and assigned this call ops 3, so that, as you heard, there was other radio traffic that chimed in. We have the central alarm dispatch is countywide, so now officers will have a dedicated channel for them.
You're off 3. Yeah, go ahead. I'm roundabout. You know how these farmers set up. He's not out on the landing like out front of the actual building. When I look through there just driving by, I don't see nobody in the breezeway there. I'm not trying to force nothing here, just to make sure I don't see him enough all the way to the firearm.
All right. As you heard, Officer Powell stated, I'm not trying to force anything here. Our officers and our department train annually on de-escalation. And de-escalation is, at times, not putting yourself in a situation where you can escalate. It's being methodical in your approach and having a well-planned out approach to a call. Much like this situation, they're not sure exactly where the subject is with a firearm. Officer Powell is in an unmarked vehicle. That's why he is driving through the area first. I just wanted to clarify what that means.
Yeah, you called in, you called in, let's get information from her about what's actually happening, how she told me, stuff like that. Then we'll figure out what we need to do from there. Yeah, I'll call her. Want anything information, we advise the caller that officers be gone. Good, thank you.
All right, here's a map indicating where this is in the city. We've already shown you exactly where in the apartment complex that we're talking about. We're going to watch the body cam footage from Corporal Diark.
Look at the side of this one right now. It's at the bottom right window, correct? And you're 100% positive that's his window?
I live in the back.
Okay.
I just don't want to write her.
Okay, so you saw him with the gun in his hand in the hallway right before you came out here and walked with us.
Yeah, but I told him to go put it up. So he was going to put it up, and I brought the dogs out.
And he had his phone number?
Okay. This is the first time that the caller witness advises our officers that he did have the gun in his hand as she walked out of the apartment complex. I think that's important to note that although we've been on the scene for a few minutes now, this is the first time that we've gotten that information, and obviously that changes some of the dynamics of the call.
You don't have his phone, honey. I don't know if the girl started it or if it's in his car. He told me the police brought him home last night.
I searched every hall in that area for Robert, the only white male.
Because he don't have his keys.
How his address
He's
is
got a
based
spare
there.
house key, and he said the police brought him home. So I don't.
Another point to note is that Corporal Olson just asked the caller if she had his phone number. At this point, all we have is the name Robert. We do not know exactly who the individual is, and Corporal Olson is asking for a cell phone number. Typically, what we try to do is, in these types of situations, is then reach out to them, talk to them, build rapport, de-escalate the situation, and come to a successful and safe resolution. That option was unavailable to the officers at the scene this night.
Pair of shorts. Has he got white hair? That's him then. Yeah, that's him. I can't see that far. Is he thin, Bill?
Finished.
Yeah, that's him. How long do they stay up on that hair or whatever it is?
It could be days.
He's been up 2 days.
Make some days, then they're paranoid.
Yeah.
He's just standing everywhere. Does he smoke?
Yeah. That's him.
And is there any other young people that potentially look like him that stay in that apartment?
No.
You're 100% positive that's him.
He's somebody else.
You're 100% positive that is him.
Yeah.
All right, the callers you heard just stated she is 100% positive that's him. And what they're referring to is the parking lot that we're talking about is just on the other side of this building, in between two buildings. Officers saw movement and see a subject who is walking around. This is the first time that they get a physical description of the suspect, and they're now confronted with him in the parking lot walking around. You'll hear in a moment that they observe something in his right hand. You're also going to hear them begin talking about less lethal options that they can use in the event that there's a confrontation.
There's nobody else. No. This is all people. There's a young girl. I'm sorry. I didn't.
It's okay. No, this
But
is,
he promised me he'd put the gun up.
well, we're hoping so. We're hoping that's the case.
Let me go see if he did.
No, you stay over here with us, okay, until we get this sorted out.
All right. You just saw Officer Powell turn to Officer Mashinsky and say, "Get your taser out." They're watching the subject walk around, and as I hit play, you're going to hear Officer Olson, who is was standing behind Corporal Diark. He is going to retrieve a less lethal 40mm munition system. So he sees that the subject has something in his hand while he's walking to his vehicle.
He's got something in there. I can't tell what he's fucking had. I don't want to use his light.
That was the first gunshot. You can hear Officer Mashinsky say he's shooting in the air. Now, let's understand what we're dealing with here. The officers are standing in front of that building and the parking lot right there. So the subject with the firearm who just fired a shot in the air is in fairly close proximity of the officers and the witness, along with the public, densely populated apartment complex.
Officer's clear.
Robert,
Shooting into the air.
drop the gun! Drop the gun!
There's one of the officers watching that.
Again, I know it's on there, but I do want to point out that Officer Powell just observed him pointing the firearm in the direction of the officers after firing a shot in the air. And you hear Corporal Diark pleading with him to drop the gun.
You see? He's behind this van right here. Somebody needs to grab a fucking rifle.
Come over here, Aaron. Come over here, Aaron. Come here, right? He's up against this building.
He's going behind the building, watch him coming around.
Behind the building towards you, Aaron. Behind the building towards you.
Robert, drop the gun! It's the police department!
There's more units on the radio.
City West Side building next to me.
He's still in the parking lot. He's just pacing around, standing.
It's the second shot that was fired.
He's walking back to the front door.
Yeah, you got that number.
Yeah, he's right in that maroon SUV coming towards us. Drop the weapon!
Step forward.
Guns away from him!
Hey, come to me. Come to me. Come to me.
I got eyes on him. Gun still left, it's in the sidewalk.
All right, we're going to talk about it more with the other body cam footage, but I just want to point out that officers have formed up in a contact team to the right of Corporal Diark. This is known as our Tactical L. We do this to maintain multiple points of view without fear of crossfire situations. You're going to see the contact team move into position towards the suspect and take him into custody, secure the weapon, and begin rendering aid.
Shots fired, suspects down, we're approaching him.
Right now.
Keep your hands where we can see it, buddy. Keep your hands up, man. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up.
We zoom into the gun, circle the gun on the ground next to suspect.
Here we go.
All right, now we're going to move to Officer Mashinsky's body cam footage.
See, this back window right there, so.
This girl says the following on the back left.
She is in apartment 3. She's talking
To him right now.
So not right now, she's talking
Did
to
you
me.
call your maintenance guy?
Well, our neighbor did.
My maintenance guy.
Yeah, our neighbor called.
I didn't know what to do
Right.
because I was scared. You know? I love him like this.
Yeah, well, we're just trying to make sure he's okay. All right, yeah, someone called a concern, and that's why there's the police presence here right now. All right, so to reiterate, you said that his apartment's this bottom right one. If you're
Got the gun on him.
okay, on him, like in his waistband or something, in his hand. Okay. Well, I don't like standing right here, especially if that's the window. He's
Oh, he's up looking out. He's sitting in the hallway.
he's standing in the hallway right now,
By his door, in his doorway.
in his doorway.
I told him to go to bed when I brought the dogs out.
Right.
I told him to put the gun up. And he was going to put the gun up. And I brought the dog run out.
And you said, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. You said that was a maintenance man that just talked to you. How does he know he's in the hallway right now? Or is Mike in there?
No, I called him and asked him. I called him and asked him what to do. No, that was Jim.
Ma'am, I know I keep asking you this, but we're kind of having a little confusion. Which apartment exactly is his? So you're looking at the side of this one right now. It's that bottom right window, correct?
Pardon me.
And you're 100% positive that's his window?
Yeah.
Okay.
He lives in the back.
Okay.
I just don't like
Okay, so you saw him with the gun in his hands in the hallway right before you came out here and walked it off?
Yeah, but I told him to go put it up. So he was going to put it up. I brought the dogs out. Yeah, he's something. I don't know if the girl stole it or if it's in his car. He told me the police brought him home last night. And
I searched every call in that area for Robert, the only white male returned to Robert in that, how his address is made out there.
police brought him home. So I didn't know if
What you're seeing now from the point of view of Officer Mashinsky is Corporal Diark seeing movement, someone moving in the parking lot, and you're going to see him, obviously, with his body language, he's observing intently as to what is going on over there, and the witness is going to confirm that that is the subject that she's called about.
100% positive that's him?
He's somebody else.
You're 100% positive that is him, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nobody else, no. This is only, there's a young girl. I'm sorry, I didn't do it. And he promised me he would have done that.
Oh, please.
All right, to pause here, as you can see, they're definitely seeing movement, trying to ascertain what is going on and what he's doing. You hear him try to confirm that that is the person that she's talking about. What you're going to see in the next video is once the officers on the scene have confirmation that that is, in fact, the subject that they're there to speak with, the one that the caller says has the firearm, Officer Olson is going to go back, or I'm sorry, Corporal Olson is going to go back to his vehicle to retrieve a less lethal option. What you just saw in the yellow jacket, Officer Powell tells Officer Mashinsky to get his taser out. And I think that's important to understand the mindset of the officers at that moment is they're thinking about there's two options that they have to try to use less lethal munitions. And in a moment, the use of those less lethal munitions are going to, the dynamics are going to change when you hear the gunfire.
Man, can you do me a favor? Come over here, please. Over behind that car with your dogs, please.
And again, he has something in his hand, and Officer Mashinsky, concerned for the witness, the innocent bystander, is going to move her to a safe location behind a vehicle.
Right now, please.
The first shot is fired.
132, he's shooting in the air.
Officer's clear. Subject shooting clear. Morning, officers. Watch you, Mary. Over. Clear, rifle.
All right, just want to, for illustration, if you remember back to the map, you have officers here taking cover, and Corporal Olson, who had just went to retrieve a less lethal option than prior to the shot being fired, has now taken a position of cover on the corner of this building on the opposite side of where the subject is seen firing the weapon. They're communicating back and forth, and in a moment you're going to hear officers talk about plate me across. And I just want to explain what that is. Officers are trained when they're moving from one cover to the other, or if they're going to be exposed to a known threat, we plate one another across. So as the officer, you're going to see Hunter Powell moving from one vehicle to another, one piece of cover to another piece of cover. Officer Christian is going to plate him. What that means is he is going to put his body armor, his chest, in front between the suspect that is a threat and the officer that is moving from one cover to the other. You can imagine how dangerous that situation is. And at that moment, the suspect is going to fire again when they're out in the open, again in close proximity.
Units over your radio. See what time is building next to me. See in the parking lot, stand by.
Officers getting ready to move from one cover to the other.
DR, do yourself, give him a rifle.
That was the second shot.
I don't have a 40. What do you say?
Again, what you're going to see in Officer or Corporal Olson's video is he's telling Officer Mashinsky to get a 40. And what that is, a 40 millimeter launcher. Uses 40 millimeter, that's a size, sponge rounds that we use for less lethal option. Within seconds, the suspect is going to advance on the officer's position, and you'll see that. You'll see that as we continue.
DR's got eyes on him. DR, you got eyes on him, right?
And again, Officer Mashinsky initially grabbed the beanbag shotgun, which is a less lethal munition. He realizes that this is a lethal encounter and the subject is fired at them as they are crossing from one cover to another, and he opts to utilize his patrol rifle.
Shot clip. Hey, keep your hands up! Hands up! Stay back. Do not reach for anything, you'll be shot! Moving! No! Moving! No! Move! Where's your gun, Sean? Get the sack, Mark, get the sack. Christian, I got a rifle out. Christian, you go ahead and shoot.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, the officers formed a contact team. What you see is Corporal Olson taking the lead. Officer Powell is in front also with lethal munitions. And they said, who's going hands? What they mean by that is we have a designated, pre-planned person as we're moving up who is going to go hands-on and put the suspect in cuffs. All right? That way, we're not trying to figure this out while we're right up on someone. This is a pre-planned action that's taken. They're in a tactical L. You'll see over on the left, Corporal Diark is got another vantage point and providing observation and relaying information where the firearm is on the ground.
Keep your hands up, dude. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. I'll get you go. There you go. Security guns.
All right, the last thing you hear on Officer Mashinsky's body-worn camera is Corporal Olson say, get the first aid kit. We're now going to watch body cam footage from Corporal Olson right now.
Okay, what's he wearing? What's he wearing right now? Is that him in the black shirt?
Has he got black hair?
Yeah, looks like it.
I can't see that far.
Yeah, he's looking around like he's a tweaker. So, man,
Thin built.
yeah, he looks thin.
Yeah, that's.
I can't see his hand though. Let's see if he goes back in. Boy, that'd be good. If he goes back in, maybe my left lethal. He's looking around like, honestly, looking around like he can't see his thing.
Yeah.
Is there any other young people with the temple look like him?
You're 100% positive that's him. There's somebody else. You're 100% positive that is him. Yeah. There's somebody else. This is old people. There's a young girl.
All right, this time Corporal Olson is going back to his vehicle to retrieve less lethal munitions. He is going to see the subject in the parking lot and see that he has something in his hand. He's also going to retrieve binoculars initially in an attempt to see what is in the subject's hand. However, that changes when the first shot is fired.
It looks like he has something in his left hand. I couldn't tell what it was.
First shot just rang out.
Officer clear. Subject shooting leader.
All right, so he's retrieved his patrol rifle. You can hear the shot that rang out. You can hear Corporal Diark pleading with him to drop the gun. You also hear Officer Powell tell him that he's pointing at officers, and he says, "Watch yourself, Aaron," talking about Corporal Olson. In a moment, they're going to tell Corporal Olson that he appears to be moving behind the building. So you're going to see Corporal Olson turning. That's because his erratic behavior, he runs, looks like he's going around the building to flank Corporal Olson's position.
Where's he at? Yeah, where's he at?
He went behind the building towards you.
Did you say he went behind this building next to me?
There's the second shot. Remember, officers moving from one point of cover to the other.
Hey, hit your 40. Come over here. All right, well, get mine then. Get one of them. I don't give a fuck.
As I explained, a 40 is 40 millimeter less lethal munition. Corporal Olson, obviously, I don't care. Get one. Unfortunately, officers were not given the time to get those resources in place. In seconds, you'll see the suspect emerge from the other side of the building.
Hey, police, put your hands up. Keep your hands up. Guys, hey, y'all stay back. Hold up. All right. Hey, come to me. Come to me. Sean, you still got eyes on him?
Where's the gun, Sean?
It's to the left of him. All right, whose hands?
On Mark's hands, me, you got
All
one.
right, let me know when you're ready to move.
I'll write it down like that. I'll write it down. Yeah.
All right. Keep your hands where we can see them, buddy.
Keep your hands up, dude. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up.
You can see the firearm circled there on the ground next to the suspect.
All right, so put him in cuffs, dude.
Surely got.
Mike, first aid kit. Get what do you got? Here, one more side.
All right, what you're seeing is Corporal Olson is immediately applying a tourniquet to the subject's right upper leg, thigh area where one of the rounds struck. It is important to note that the two main causes of a shooting death is excessive bleeding, hemorrhaging, and the lack of a secured airway. What you're going to see is the officers immediately work to manage those two potential fatal injuries. They're going to apply the tourniquet, and they're going to apply chest seals to the wound that's in his chest. Those are applied in the event that there is a sucking chest wound that collapses a lung. By applying a chest seal, it gives the opportunity for the individual to be able to expand their lungs, continue to breathe. So again, the two important factors is to stop the bleed and to secure an airway. And you're going to see officers doing those two things immediately upon contacting him.
Hold that way. Hold the second. Hold it. Mike, you got chest seals?
Just do it.
So you can grab that somewhere right there.
Corporal Olson refers to his IFAC. All of our officers are issued individual first aid kits with tourniquets, bandages, and chest seals. That's what he's referring to when he says IFAC.
That's a bandage. Where's this exit?
Hang in there.
What you just heard on the radio with other officers ready to coordinate a traffic response to block roads for EMS to get to the University of Louisville Hospital as quickly as possible. Officers are, as you can see, are frantically applying life-saving measures in an attempt to stop the bleed and to secure airways.
Hey, move the car so the ambulance can get up here. I got the light.
Thank you. Keep oil on me. So I haven't seen this one. I was trying to get it exposed. That's as high as I get the tourniquet, but I think it's almost right on top, just because all the blood was right there. So. Yeah, that's what she-
All right. A couple things that I do want to just go over real quick before I turn it over to the Assistant Chief McVoy. Our policy on deadly force 300.4, when reasonable, the officer shall, prior to the use of deadly force, make efforts to identify him or herself as a peace officer and to warn that deadly force may be used unless the officer has objectively reasonable grounds to believe the person is aware of those facts. The use of deadly force is justified in the following circumstances involving imminent threat or imminent risk. An officer may use deadly force to protect him or herself or others for what he or she reasonably believes is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. Furthermore, Indiana Code 3541.33 defines imminent. Imminent does not mean immediate or instantaneous. An imminent danger may exist even if the suspect is not at that very moment pointing a weapon at someone. For example, an imminent danger may exist if an officer reasonably believes that the individual has a weapon or is attempting to access one and intends to use it against the officer or another person. An imminent danger may also exist if the individual is capable of causing serious bodily injury or death without a weapon. The officer believes the individual intends to do so. I present these to articulate the policy of the department and the Indiana Code, which discusses the imminent threat and imminent risk. The suspect was, after the video, the suspect was transported to the University of Louisville Hospital and sadly succumbed to his injuries a few days later. This time, I'll turn it over to the Assistant Chief for a brief summary.
Thank you, Major. What you all just witnessed is a traumatic event which occurred in the city on March the 9th. It's traumatic for the family of the suspect. It's traumatic for the witnesses who were present on scene. And it's also traumatic for the injured or the officers involved in the incident. That is not a common occurrence for anyone that either does this job or is just trying to enjoy the peaceful tranquility of their neighborhood on any given night. So it's important to recognize, and I appreciate your all's patience as we broke down each body cam version and the course of events. Too often in society we are quick to get a snippet, or I understand that you all have a job to do and get information out to the general public, but it's also important for us to do the research and watch and break down so you all have the information so you can provide this information to the public in a responsible manner. Shortly, you'll hear remarks from the Chief of Police, and then we'll open it up to questions. Again, I'll remind you that this is an open investigation with the Indiana State Police. They do not have a representative here today, and it's also an open investigation with the Jeffersonville Police Department administratively. Those are still going on concurrently. There's still more information to be ascertained throughout the course of this event. So I would ask you in your questioning here shortly to please be mindful of that, and that we're only here to discuss the information that was provided through the body-worn camera in Major Lynch's presentation. Major Lynch is a 20-year veteran. He's our training commander. He's a former SWAT commander. He has years and years of experience in being able to break down and hopefully explain to you all the terminology and what you witnessed is beneficial to you and your reporting purposes. For the family, we have had communication with the mother of the suspect and the chiefs. I won't get into specifics about that conversation. However, I am very appreciative of the information that she provided to our officers who were involved, as well as to the chief of police. Again, like I said, this is a very traumatic incident for everyone involved, and is not a common occurrence in the city of Jeffersonville or anywhere for anyone to experience for that nature. So Chief Kavanaugh is here, and he will provide the conclusion, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Thank you.
Assistant Chief McVoy, thank you. Major Lynch, thank you for that detail of information that we were able to present with your expertise. I want to share with you that, in conclusion, we have the responsibility within policing to police professionally, to police responsibly, to police ethically. Presenting this body-worn camera video today, we have shown the Jeffersonville Police Department in our entirety of this incident. There's nothing that we're holding back. There's still 2 more videos that go, but we've taken 3 of the videos, and you're going to see more of the same and similar. We've taken the 3 components of what we could present to you to be able to share and show you that, okay? And when you have these types of situations, we have a duty to care. We have a duty that is responsible for public safety. But the way that we do that, it must be through policing with legitimacy. I think you understand and you realize what we have the expectation of our officers in the city of Jeffersonville, me as the chief of police, the executive law enforcement leader, my staff, our first line supervisors. We take that serious to the core of public safety, protecting our public. We want to do everything that we could in this situation to bring it to a resolve. This outcome is not what we wanted, to be able to have to engage and use deadly force. It's not what we're looking for. But if we have to do that, we have to be able to answer those questions to the forefront, what the department stands upon, how the department's doing that, and in relationship to our community. There's an expectation, and this is here what we're doing today. So being pretty clear. The criminal recklessness with the weapon resulting in the officer-involved shooting. You've seen it here today. We responded to this incident of a man with a gun, and then the situation was rapidly evolving and very tense. The realization of the officers, you've got those unscripted reactions, human beings, the human factor on our side when that shot. You also, in the context of that video, there's some things I actually noticed. If you kind of reflect back, you see prior to the shot being fired, you see the officers starting to move that witness over. You see in the video, if you can reflect back, Corporal Diark is actually, he's turning around, he's looking at the officer. Officer Hunter Powell actually comes up to the vehicle, and they're looking across the parking lot. They're responding to the human, that nature, what they're actually seeing and what's happening, occurring. And as Officer Mashinsky is asking her to move, within seconds, within 5 seconds, you're starting to get that shot. So these officers out on that scene, you start seeing their movement. They could understand, they could detect. Even me sitting here watching that video, I can feel what's happening, what's going on there by watching their reactions and being on that types of scenes in my experience of 29 years. So you have to understand that we're not wanting this, but how we're prepared and professionally and ethically that we're going to react and respond. The ethical part is how we gave that care afterwards, engaging deadly force. The imminent threat to public safety and the officers by the actions of the suspect. Again, Major Lynch just gave you detail of what the policy is, what the state law is with regards to use of force, and that word imminent threat to public safety and the officers is pretty clear and apparent what was happening, what was occurring there. The officers took plenty of steps and measures to try to work through this problem. They were gathering information, a lot of communication. You hear Officer Hunter Powell stating, I'm not trying to force this, I'm not trying to rush in. We're not wanting this type of engagement, okay? And that's pretty clear. Gathering information, reaching out for communication of a taser, less lethal options. You saw Officer Mashinsky was going to grab that less lethal shotgun that had the orange on that with the beanbag rounds, and then obviously he recognized the transition to it's a lethal encounter situation. The suspect firing on 2 separate occasions within close proximity, but you have to recognize and understand this. The situation statically, it changes to even more serious and danger when he starts closing the distance and closing the distance coming towards the officers, okay? And we know and understand through the data that's been produced that when a police officer is encountering gunfire, but when a police officer has someone that is closing that distance, the odds goes down for that police officer for survival, that someone is coming upon them with a weapon. So you see that the decisions that are actually made, the training, the recognition of department policy, what the law is, and then that reaction that the officers did engage deadly force. Again, our responsibilities, that that ethical part. We have the responsibility that we did engage deadly force, but once we can make that scene safe and secure, you saw the officers, you saw Corporal Aaron Olson, these officers that work through our training platform to be able to give that level of care. This is what we have the responsibility to in the citizens of Jeffersonville and our relationship to Southern Indiana. This is what the Jeffersonville Police Department will do, and you did witness here today how we were able to give that care. So in closing here, I'm going to ask Assistant Chief McVoy, Major Lynch, we're going to open this up for some questions. Keep in mind the investigation is still active with the Indiana State Police. It's going to present information to Mr. Mull, the Clark County prosecutor here in Clark County, Jeremy Mull, to his office for the information in the decision, because this is recognized as a criminal investigation because it is a homicide, okay? What happened occurred, and the officers recognize this. We recognize this as the police department. Also, we have an active internal investigation that is occurring with our agency to determine if officers did violate any policy or any procedure. So these officers do recognize what the actions they've taken. We take that serious to the core and to the value, and we're looking at this from a conclusive, objective, reasonable standard. But also as Chief of Police, the executive law enforcement leader, and we're putting the information out. I see the factors and I see the variables here, and I stand with confidence and trust before you today to tell you I know that these police officers did everything within their reasonable power to do everything appropriately and correctly to handle this situation. We'll open the floor up for some questions at this time. Yes, ma'am.
Question: we know that the first gunshot was fired into the air by the suspect, but was the second gunshot, was it fired toward the officers, or was that also in the air?
It was indicated it was fired towards the air, but one of the things that I noticed after reviewing the video several times, when those officers started that move and they started to move towards Officer Hunter Powell to go to his vehicle, and he had Officer Seth Christian plating him, if you watch right within that movement, within seconds of them starting to move, that gunshot came, okay? So that gunshot came while they were moving. It just shows a degree of danger, and we do recognize and know that the individual has had training through the military, but you recognize from the tactical side of an engagement, if someone is moving, you're in a tactical engagement, and as they're moving, there is going to be gunfire, okay? So there's also that part that we're being strategic. You have to recognize there are strategic measures that are happening and taking place on the other side with the suspect in this case.
The man was shot twice. He was shot in the chest and in the leg. Are those the only two shots that you all were able to determine happened?
Right now, through the course of investigation, we do know by the treatment in here, those are the two identified wounds, but I still have not had conclusive reports fully come back, but I can tell you that that is correct, what you've actually seen and what you've witnessed by video here.
Do we know which officer fired those shots?
Yes, we've identified at this point in time, we have 5 officers involved, and we're identifying Officer Hunter Powell, Corporal Aaron Olson, and Corporal Sean DeArc as the 3 officers that did fire their weapons in this incident.
And are you able to confirm what type of gun the suspect had?
No, not at this time. That information has not been brought forward to the agency in regards to that part of the investigation. So that is still ongoing with the Indiana State Police.
I think I counted, it sounded like around 9 shots fired by officers. Can you confirm that, 9 to 12?
I'm going to say there's multiple shots that were actually fired with 3 different officers, and we don't have an exact count. That will come out in the internal investigation. But I can tell you that the officers, out of 5 officers that are there on scene, the 3 officers that I have identified that they did fire more than one time each.
And what was the timeline between Atkins' first shot and the police shooting?
Looking exactly at the CAD, it's 2 minutes and 13 seconds. I identified that, myself and Major Lynch. We did the incident of March 9th, but his time frame of 7:04 and then 2 minutes and 13 seconds passed by with the officers with the exact data timestamp from the computer automated dispatch when the officers fired.
Are these officers back at work, or are they still on leave?
They're still on administrative leave, and there's a due process that they're actually going through. Obviously the criminal investigation, the internal investigation, there's also services that are being made available to them individually. They've also, just in this week, they've completed their actually group debrief. Then we've had a second group debrief with some assistance of our agency members and also a retired member that's actually come in to the department to be able to assist working with the Jeffersonville Police Department. And this is going to be ongoing here for the next couple of weeks. What these officers have to complete and work through with this situation. Okay, this is life-changing. It's life-changing, obviously, for the family. This is life-changing for anyone that is a police officer in dealing with this situation. Actually, we have the responsibility to know within duty that we may have the ability to engage a deadly unforced situation, but working through this as well, because this is going to be just life-changing, life-altering for these officers.
Based on what we've seen here today, do you still believe that the shooting was justified?
Absolutely, I do, based upon the facts that we have at hand and the variables. And you have to recognize public safety. When we talk about public safety, someone discharging or firing a firearm, and you have to look at it from this lens and context. If the officers are not here, and you get the report he's walking around someone in society with the firearm, and then we have someone that goes a step further and they start engaging that firearm and that deadly force, then you have an active shooter encounter situation that the police is trying to catch up with and to respond to. So I'm thankful that we got the call when we did. I am thankful, and I feel that for public safety reasons that we were blessed to have those officers on scene to be able to make those observations, to try to work through this problem for de-escalation. But however, the situation was escalated by the actions of the individual starting to fire that firearm and pull that trigger. And then, as you see from the video, the officers responded through their training, through their actions, being accountable, and you saw that they were under control. Yes, you did see the officers, the realization of them, and you got the real emotion from them communicating with one another. I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to try to cover that. That is as real as you can get. But you have to understand that you have someone distance away, feet away, that's discharging a firearm, and then they're closing a distance on you as well. And you hear them call for a rifle. We need to call for a rifle because we're out at a distance, and then he is moving around. He's creating movement. When the part that you hear that he's going behind the building and they're reaching out to Corporal Aaron Olson, that's pretty clear and deliberate if he makes that move and angle and comes out around behind those officers. Okay, that's not, when you have a firearm and you're taking affirmative action such as that nature, that is seriously dangerous. Okay, and I recognize that here from the administrative capacity, just such as Major Lynch, myself, and other staff members. Assistant Chief McVoy is a K-9 officer, K-9 handler. I'm a former SWAT team member and a SWAT commander as well. So this is at the highest degree of escalation that you can get for danger and harm that's occurring in society with someone firing and discharging a weapon. The fact of the matter that we had police officers on scene is something that I'm thankful and blessed fortunate enough that we situation and have that type of deadly encounter aggression directed towards us and dealing with us versus some citizen.
Have you all been able to learn any more about what led up to why the suspect was out there in the first place with a gun?
You know, I want to say, and Assistant Chief McVoy made reference, we had communication with the family and they were able to shed some light on the situation in the background there. My heart goes out to them to have to deal with this situation here and the struggles that this young man has had. But it still doesn't change the situation of the encounter, of the actions and the behavior. And, you know, we have to look at mental health, the situation, the crisis of what we have. We have to look at how we can better protect and take care of our veterans and make sure that when we return them to society that we're doing everything in our capacity to be able to support them for serving our country and making the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and our liberties.
So he was a veteran?
Yes, he was.
He was a veteran. And you said mental health, but were there any drugs involved that you can confirm?
You know, that information was presented to us. It was presented to us by the witness, and we understand that there's a history and background with some challenges that is substance that related, unfortunately, here in this situation. And I think that, you know, it is playing a role, but I'm not going to sit here. I don't want to be from the standpoint, I want to be respectful to the family. It was a factor, but I don't want to be here after the fact running this gentleman down with everything that's happened occurred. I want to be totally respectful.
You all made contact with him 24 hours prior, arranged for him to go up to Clark Memorial. Is there anything the police department can do from where you all stand to say, hey, this person needs to be under a 72-hour hold, or is that something that has to come as a directive from like the hospital system?
I'm going to let Assistant Chief McVoy weigh into that.
I believe the question was there anything that the police department can do? Again, we're here to speak about the events on March the 9th. It's been reported that there was not encounter, but contact was made with him, I believe, 2 days prior. And I don't have the specifics for that, so it wouldn't be fair for me to comment specifically on that. We do follow our policies and procedures when it comes to people who need to be transported or taken to evaluations for either a EDO or any type of health care. And once they're delivered to that respective hospital, then they are in the hands of that hospital, and they are the determining factor at that point. Less our paperwork, and there's only so much that you can do as far as the holds. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, so it's perfectly plausible for someone to enter into that situation, and tell a doctor or someone of that nature anything and everything that they want to hear so they can be released immediately. And that's happened in the past as well. And that's unfortunate. But again, I couldn't comment on the specific nature of that interaction at that time, if that helps you a little bit.
It was said before a few weeks ago that he pointed the gun at officers. After looking at the body cam video, does that still stand? So I know he shot twice in the air, but did he actually point at officers?
That information is contained in the Indiana State Police report. However, you did hear our officers who were on scene were watching their body-worn camera of footage, which gives you a viewpoint, not a total viewpoint, about a 180-degree viewpoint. And I believe that if the officers are stating that he is pointing a weapon, they are seeing that real time, and that information is coming from them. Again, so I think there's some potential for investigators to begin to slow that footage down even more to potentially capture that in the future, but that's not something that I'm comfortable stating right now. Yes, ma'am.
I know you can't comment on the, the procedures he had done the day before that he went to the hospital and such, but do you think if he wouldn't have been released or the procedure would have been different, this could have been prevented?
I have no comments on what occurred when he began to seek treatment. I think we can all sit here and say that mental health issues across the country, nationwide, are an issue. They've been brought to light, especially during the COVID era and afterwards. I think hospitals are sometimes overwhelmed with mental health issues. I think police, unfortunately, are injected into, and what you witnessed was a police officer or police officers having to respond to a call, judge mental health state, provide what I would describe as a high level of life-saving care after the incident, and then also do their job to protect themselves as well as the community. So again, it wouldn't be fair for me to comment on what a licensed psychologist or a doctor, I would never do that. I would have to take whatever their observations are and go with that. Obviously, we could say, what if this, that, and everything else, but I don't know that that's something that would be factual for me to comment on. Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. And so did the officers knew mental health was involved when going into the scene?
I don't think so. I don't think that was reported on the CAD. You saw the interaction that they had with the witness, which mostly the witness mostly reported substance abuse type issues.
On one of the body cam footage videos, we heard one of the officers say, "I don't have my 40," and another one's like, "Well, you just get one." Do they always have those with them? Is that something extra you grab in certain situations, or is that something that's always supposed to be there?
Major Lynch is our tactical expert, so he'll be able to give you all those answers.
I do want to, if I may, follow up. If you would remember, though, the question about did they know prior? All they knew at the time was a first name. So there's no way that they could have correlated that to any previous call, even if they could. All they had was a first name. And they could only go by the witness's information, which was that as a neighbor who you would think knows and is aware of the individual, says that he's acting irregular and believes that he is on narcotics. In reference to your question about the less lethal munitions, our officers go through annual training, and there are multiple options that we have available to our officers. There is our taser, which we carry on our person. Officers are certified with that annually, every officer. Some officers who have more tactical training are issued the 40-millimeter launchers. Those weapon systems are in their vehicle and available if need be. And the third option that we train our officers on annually and certify them is the beanbag shotgun. It is a modified 12-gauge shotgun that fires a less lethal beanbag round. All of those have different effective ranges and potential effective rates, things like that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, should that always be in the vehicle, where you're saying, "I don't have mine with me," or is that?
Well, he doesn't have a 40. He has the beanbag. So not every officer has both options. available. It depends on their level of training and skill. Officer Mashinsky has been on the department since 2021, and he has been certified with the beanbag 12-gauge shotgun.
And in that video, the shotgun you saw him reach towards, it had the orange stripe on the less lethal shotgun. He was reaching for the less lethal shotgun. So we keep our personnel, besides with obviously their duty weapon, their secondary, their long weapon, but also in addition to a taser, we have officers equipped and outfitted in Jeffersonville with beanbag shotguns or a 40-millimeter launcher, and we have that vast throughout the entire department. We've had other instances where officers have been out to detectives to be able to assist on scenes to deploy, where we want to bring a multifaceted options of opportunities available for solutions for resolve before we get to deadly force. I think that due diligence is our responsibility to do that, policing with care, policing with legitimacy, and to be able to show the public that we're doing everything that we can to exhaust the means and measures responsibly and appropriately before we get to the situation of engaging deadly force.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Officers get on scene with their service weapons. I guess there's a report of a man with a gun. At what point is the decision made to go after the less lethal force first?
Well, I don't want to generalize every call for service, because every call for service has its own separate dynamics and issues. But I will say that in most cases, officers have the opportunity to coordinate. And what you saw was Corporal Olson beginning that process. You saw Officer Hunter Powell telling Mashinsky to grab his taser. Now, that is a very short range weapon system. You only have, I think, 25 feet of effective range. And so as Officer Olson is retrieving a less lethal 40-millimeter munition, the situation then changes to a lethal encounter when he fires. No one wants to have a sponge round 40-millimeter in a gunfight. I think we would all agree with that. Do have to have our personal safety at mind, at heart. Does that answer your question?
You mentioned having additional footage to review. The investigation is still ongoing. What do you anticipate or hope to learn in the next couple weeks that you haven't learned already?
I think the Indiana State Police is still conducting their investigation. Obviously, we rely on their information. We have our investigators internally that will sift through, again, as I said earlier, they'll analyze hours of video footage. There's potential for other private third-party video surveillance to be available. I don't have access to that. That would be through the Indiana State Police. So I couldn't predict what investigators either with this agency or the Indiana State Police will find and provide. And if it's substantial to the investigation, obviously we would notify you all and have another session, if you would.
Mr. Lynch, how do I spell your name?
My last name is L-Y, N as in Nora, C-H. First name's Joshua, J-O-S-H-U-A.
Common spelling, as he'll say.
Yeah.
I would like to ask if we could about the Sunday night shooting at Veronica Place. Is there going to be an update on the person arrested or a name release for that arrest?
Lieutenant Moss will have a separate update involving that incident. Today is solely regarding the officer-involved shooting.
When will that update take place?
I can't. He'll notify you via the normal email, mass chain. I'll speak with him when we're finished with this and get you all some more information.
Should citizens be concerned about safety just with two shooting events happening close together in Jeffersonville, or they're all just kind of isolated, do you think?
Absolutely not. These are isolated incidents, occurred at two different locations within the city. Both have been resolved. Both are still under investigation. There is no danger to the community. However, I will tell the community if they do have information to contact our TIPS line or detective division. If they do have information regarding either incident, to feel free, but there is absolutely no reason for anyone in the city of Jeffersonville to feel unsafe at this time.
And let's recognize that around the country, violent crime is up 30% as of last fall. That information was coming to light up to 30%. So we are going to have situations that are going to happen here in southern Indiana and Jeffersonville and Clark County. It is going to happen. It's going to take place. It's taking place all over the country. We see it happening, taking place here in the city adjacent to us here in Louisville, Kentucky. So it is going to happen and occur. What the response is going to be from law enforcement, how we respond to that, how we mitigate that, is our responsibility to do that professionally, responsibly, and ethically.
Did Robert fire back at all, or just the initial 2 shots that you're aware of?
It's still under investigation. I don't have any information at this time to state that he did or did not. And I think that all that information needs to be presented by the Indiana State Police to the agency as well as the prosecutor's office. But again, we will update any additional findings as that becomes available.
And I'm
All right.
sorry if I missed this.
Well, last one, and then we'll conclude.
Are the officers on leave pending both investigations?
At this time, yes.
All right, thank you for your time. That'll conclude our presentation.
I know that was a marathon session, so I appreciate your all's patience. I'm sorry. As you see, the room did heat up after a while, so.
Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate your time with us. Yes. Yes. What names you want to get?
Yeah, I don't.
No,
There's a bunch of them. I'm sorry.
He had to leave to go to a live shot and he left.
Kavanaugh.
Oh, okay.
VA.
Are we going to get a copy of, are you going to email us?
I'll
the body
talk
cam?
to. Oh, the body cam. I believe.